Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Well, Lee Borland's up. Did I invite you? You've talked already today.
I'm attached to his hip, you have to take me.
Now, what'd you say, 44 years?
49.
40, oh, that's even worse.
Thank you, folks. I can't follow John's wonderful talk just now, but I agree with everything he said. I'm a Vietnam-era vet, but I did not go to Vietnam for a number of reasons, one of which they wouldn't let me because of security. Did my time in the service as a bomb disposal officer, and afterwards spent many years in the defense industry designing and building the stuff that was used in Vietnam. Some of it was special stuff that I can't talk about. But we had a good time, and when the war ended, I somehow or other ended up in the hazardous waste business because one of my friends that did IR countermeasures ended up being the branch chief for the EPA Hazardous Waste Division, and the next thing I know, I'm doing the incineration work on Agent Orange for the Air Force, and then demilling chemical weapons for the Army. We became entrepreneurs at some point of time, and then started a business and got out of the defense industry and really was totally away from it until 9/11. And it was a shock because here it had come back and hit us again when we weren't expecting it. Worse probably than anything we've seen since Pearl Harbor. 2 years later, 2003, we realized that everybody had forgotten. They had not paid attention to the lesson. They did not understand what the message was that was being given us. So I sat down and said, you know, I'm going to write a book. Now, I had a story in my mind for many, many years based on another incident that goes all the way back to my being a first lieutenant. But I said, you know, they could attack us with nuclear devices, not weapons, but devices. So I sat down and said, you know, I'm going to write that novel that I thought about, but I'm going to, instead of being the Chinese or the Russians, it's going to be the Islamic terrorist. So we sat down and I started writing The Rings of Allah. And my first book presentation was to the Society of Mechanical Engineers that were all out of the Cape Canaveral area. And I started about halfway into my presentation. Some old guy holds his hand up and says, what made you think you could write fiction? Well, I was prepared for a lot of questions, but that wasn't one of them. So, I started to go, Well, I wrote a lot of government proposals. So, let us tell you a little bit about our trilogy of books. The Rings of Allah. They're going to slide. Behold an Ashen Horse. And the one we just released, the third book of the trilogy, America Reborn. Yeah, so we can get these out of the way so we don't have an avalanche, and we'll continue. Got them over there? Good. Okay, we put together a little talk on the book rather than trying to read sections because there's 3 long novels. So let me start with a little telling you about the trilogy. Our futuristic Clash of Civilizations trilogy began with The Rings of Allah, the story of Islamic terrorists' devastating nuclear attack that destroyed 5 American cities.
Behold an Ashen Horse continued the story of America's survival and retribution under the no-holds-barred leadership of President George Robert Alexander, who with his cabinet learned that the newly formed Islamic Empire, the Caliphate, was responsible for the attack. They realized they were in a religious war and formed an interfaith advisory committee to explain Muhammad's teachings. During their presentation, the IFAC quote verses from the Quran.
And I'll preface before I go forward that the actual references are made in the book. I don't remember them, so I can't give you the actual verses, but they are in the book. So it continues. If you gain mastery of them in battle, inflict such a defeat as would terrorize them, so they would learn a lesson and be warned. Deal so forcibly as to terrify those who would follow, that they may be warned. Make a severe example of them by terrorizing Allah's enemies.
After a briefing with the IFAC, Alexander ponders how to prosecute the war with the Islamic Empire. His thoughts.
Sitting quietly by himself, Alexander mused, the West has failed in dealing with Islam on Western terms. Islam has its own rules and values. Now we must use those same rules and values to deal with them. It is the only way to make them understand. We must use force, force beyond their own capabilities or comprehension.
Shaking his head and sighing deeply, Alexander softly muttered,
So be it.
Alexander chooses the nuclear option as he methodically prepares to wage war on the Islamic Empire. Operation Failure followed by Operation Brimstone.
Behold, an ashen horse ends and America Reborn begins with Operation Brimstone, America's attack on the Islamic Empire. Islam's holiest places are reduced to radioactive ash and the Caliphate's armies are decimated. Operation Brimstone, the conquest of the Middle East begins. All company-level Army and Marine units in Saudi Arabia have all female commanders, all the way down to the squad level. A way of introducing the concept of women's rights to Wahhabists. Captain Erica Borg commands a ranger company in Saudi Arabia. Ordered to wipe out every vestige of Islam, Borg meets with local resistance from the religious police and the clerics who are about to stone a young American girl. When Borg attempted to push past the three clerics, the Ayatollah from Iran spat on her.
Instantly reacting, Borg delivered a lightning-fast spinning back fist that shattered the Ayatollah's cheekbone and knocked him unconscious to the ground. You stupid, filthy old man, she snarled, staring down at him, and what appeared to be a dirty pillowcase covering something on the ground next to him. What in the name of God is going on, she asked herself. Leaning forward to inspect the object more closely, Borg frowned, for the object beneath the pillowcase moved, and to her complete surprise, she clearly heard the little voice she'd been seeking say, "Thank you, Jesus!" Flinging the soiled cloth aside, Borg gasped in disgust, for there, buried to her breast, looking up at her with huge brown eyes, was a dirty, tear-streaked little face, framed by a mop of dark brown, matted hair.
While America waged war with the Islamic Empire, other forces complicate Alexander's efforts to reestablish government. Drug cartels attempt to take over border states. America's ambassador to France, joined by several far-left liberal governors and two Hollywood actors, Michael Grosskut and Sean Bick, attempt to oust Alexander in a coup. Code Pink disrupts Alexander's presentation to the Western governors on his plans to re-elect the government. Drug cartels begin a border war. All of these problems and many more delay Alexander's plans to revitalize the country.
While America Reborn is both a military and political thriller, its message is based upon a woman's question to Benjamin Franklin at the end of the Constitutional Convention of 1787. She asked, "Well, Mr. Franklin, what do we have, a monarchy or a republic?" Franklin answered,
A republic, if you can keep it.
America Reborn concludes with Alexander speaking to the nation, reminding them that our government was founded on the Constitution, which is not a living document open for constant reinterpretation, but rather, thanks to the wisdom of our founding fathers, one that can be amended. Alexander tells the people, we have an opportunity to return to the values that made America great, that soon they will be presented with a series of referendums that will decide the country's future. Referendums are his method of reconnecting the people to their responsibility to vote and to watch their elected officials to see what they are doing. The story ends with Alexander's speech. Some of the key points follow.
I speak to you today about the future of the constitutional republic known as the United States of America. Your country, my country, ours to make great, or ours to throw away. And then skipping forward. If America is to remain strong, you must participate in the political process. The sacred right of every individual is to vote. Then he goes on later. We have many decisions to make as a people, decisions that will affect our lives and those of our children and grandchildren for decades to come. And then at the end, he says, this is your country, your republic, to keep are to lose. May God bless you and guide us as a united people in the decisions we must make. Good afternoon, and God bless America.